perfectly in time, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Markus Stiglegger. Markus Stiglegger is Professor of Film Studies. He's currently teaching at several universities, at the University of Mainz, University of Regensburg, University of Ludwigsburg, and University of Klagenfurt. And he's also a visiting professor at Clemson University in the US. He is one of these persons where I always wonder how it actually has to be several persons because he's so productive. He has published multiple books, starting with his PhD thesis, Sadiko Nazista in 2016. He has published on the war film, on pop and cinema. He was the editor of a big book on genre theory and many other things. He writes film reviews. He also makes music, and I'm sure he makes just too many things to list here. But now he will talk about performative iPhone cinema. Can feature films and series resist spoiler damage? Markus, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this introduction and for having me here at University of Zurich, even if it is virtual. Yeah, when you asked me to participate and invited me in this conference, I was actually at Ludwigsburg teaching practical film students, and they always approached me with "Don't spoiler this, don't spoiler that," and then I told them we cannot analyze a film or talk about a film deeply if we do not spoil, as you say. And a film has to resist these things. That is something which came up in literature now and several times this day. So I will approach this idea, but from a little bit different angle, because the second thing is when I was thinking about what can I actually contribute here. I remembered a talk I had at the film festival in Cologne 2019 with the filmmaker Niklas Winding Refn. And my whole paper now will be on Niklas Winding Refn because he said two things which made me think. The first thing is that he said when he had this huge breakthrough with Drive, he realized that contemporary cinema has to deal with different challenges, and that is basically that a film has to be able to be seen on a big screen as well as on the iPhone. So you have to think of filmmaking in a way that it has to unfold on the large screen and the smaller screen alike. The second thing is, he said, he is working on TV series, or he actually shot a TV series at that point, where he tried to create something which is absolutely spoiler resistant. And at that point, we will enter this. And I hope, is this the full screen presentation now? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. All right, so now the problem is I cannot move it. Okay, so this is Refn at Cologne. And this is what I told you. The cinematic means have to grant equal effectivity on a big screen and on the iPhone, and the spoiler-resistant series. First of all, I took a closer look at what Niklas Winding Refn's style is like, and I would call it performative cinema. What is his style like? He prefers performance instead of narration. He counts on duration of the scenes instead of narrative efficiency. He uses high contrast based on opposites. I will show you some images soon. He creates center-focused images composition and uses ambient drone sound design, which influences directly how your body feels. And you feel it in the cinema, not on the iPhone, obviously. And he uses hyperreal sound effects. I would say silent gazes is a trademark shot he uses again and again, people staring at things. Then he has a low focus range with huge image sections blurred. He uses primary colors, blue, yellow, and red appear all the time, and especially starting with the film drive and after that. And he uses excessive graphic violence, a point of critique when people are dealing with his films. And last, he uses iconic actors like Tom Hardy, Elle Fanning, Mads Mikkelsen, John Turturro, or Keanu Reeves. To show you some images before Drive, he made a film called VALHALLA Rising, which has this a different color palette. It's nearly monochrome, but it also already has some tendencies towards this center-based action. He has the high contrast images where you can have a kind of minimal image aesthetics. He has he doesn't use too much structures in his images at that time, but this will change soon when he comes to the film after Drive, as we'll see. He uses highly symbolic image creations. Also here you can see the protagonist is over-stylized as being kind of a reincarnation of the Germanic god Odin on Earth, and he is called One Eye, so there's a huge connection. We had this when we talked about the Neil Gaiman book. And he is strongly focusing on quoting very famous film examples from directors like Akira Kurosawa or Andrzej Tarkovsky. So that's the film before Drive. Then last thing here is he has some elements of primary colors versus the monochrome image creations, but it's very rare in this film. So the breakthrough with Drive changed his style significantly towards what I would call performing in a very aestheticized and high level. The next film was Only God Forgives, also featuring Ryan Gosling. And as we see here, he now uses primary colors in a very extreme manner. He has still the center-focused action. It's very confrontative, and you can imagine that an image like this can be captured on a small screen as well as on the big screen. So this is his step towards kind of what he called iPhone cinema in a way. And now he introduces some more structure into his images, but more on the level of abstract structures. As we see here, when it takes time to even realize that the female protagonist is in the center of the image. And he goes a step further with a Neon Demon in 2016, which is his last work for cinema to date, where he mixes this on a very aesthetical level, sometimes inspired by fashion photography, which makes sense because this film is taking place in the fashion scene in LA. So just to give you or to remind you of how his aesthetics work. And he already has very extreme examples of high contrast minimalism, as I would call it, where he kind of isolates certain faces like here within the image. So this also pays tribute to the big screen as well as the small screen. And there's an interesting thing in this. You would say this is center-based. It is minimalist. It is focused on the face of one of the protagonists. But it also has a small gimmick in the mirroring effect. You will see a swastika structure, but this you probably will not realize on the iPhone. So he still has something which pays off in the big screen much more than on the small screen. So what is performative cinema or a performative series before we come to the spoilers. This refers to some ideas I had in 2006 in my book Ritual and Seduction on the seduction theory of film. So I defined it there as the focus of performative situations, action in form of dance, sex, speeches, violence, obviously, long takes, ultra slow pace, close to slow motion, unusual perspectives. We'll see that. Focus on eyes and bodies in the sense of gaze and choreography. So the silent gaze, his trademark shot, is in this category. The existentialist border situations that his protagonists are thrown in, and the drone sounds which penetrate the body, which I already mentioned. Also, he uses a typical element for performative cinema is ecstatic rhythms, contrast and color. We have seen that. Transgressive moments and the duration of certain acts of violence and sexuality. It's interesting that Nicholas Winding Refn focuses on violence and has very rarely sexual situations, saying that his series, he later shot, I will come to now, has the longest sexual situations in all of his work. It's very interesting, in my opinions, and it has a reason. And then there are sudden changes in events which are unforeseeable, and this is the first hint towards the spoiler resistance. And there's a dream reality and a hermetic world in performative cinema, which we also find here. When we come to his series from 2019, it is called Too Old to Die Young. And it's a 10-episode series produced by Amazon. It's still available on Amazon Prime. It is well hidden. You will not be get an algorithm bringing it to you. You have to search it, but it is there, believe me. And this series was his idea of, I have now the budget and the time to create a 13-hour movie. And saying that, 10 episodes, 13 hours runtime. The episodes range from the shortest one is the last one. The final payoff is 31 minutes, and the longest one is 97 minutes, which is kind of a feature film in itself. And this hints to a certain point that the episodes are completely different, completely. So the silent gaze, so you have an idea, the main actor in the first episode, Miles Teller is the actor here, is a cop who witnesses his partner getting shot and then is thrown into a kind of vortex combined with the Japanese, the Mexican mafia, and a kind of a vigilante organization who is killing pedophiles. So this is as vague as I say it now. It's kind of meandering through all the episodes. But the first episode starts so slow that it was criticized to putting off the audiences by having so long takes. And this is like the silent gaze in a perfect condition, like several minutes. At least you feel it like several minutes. Here's the low focus range, for example, which also is interesting because it very much works on the iPhone as well. So he calculates as people being on the train watching this series on their iPhones. And that is a kind of a means he kind of tried to perfect in this context. Also, the center-based action is, again, here we see Jana Malone. She appears relatively late in a later episode in the series, but becomes one of the two main female actresses in protagonists in the series, which is kind of unusual in itself. And here we have the center-based minimalism again, high contrast images shot against the sun, especially in the Mexican episode. And here he has very much this image composition, which resembles his earlier work, but it's much more to the point, much more radical in this sense. And I think, you have an impression of this series. I will show you a scene of this series if we have time, but I will come to my conclusion first, and then we see where we can. Why is this series now? And this is our topic here, spoiler resistant. It works with multiple equal characters. That's the first point. So we do never know who is the real protagonist because there is no one protagonist. It's always changing. The protagonists are changing unpredictably from one episode to the next. So in the second episode, the guy from the first episode does not appear at all. So it just takes place in a different place and has different characters. The multiple subplots appear in certain episodes and will be skipped alike. They appear, but they disappear. Like the Japanese Yakuza subplot, it just disappears and leads to nowhere. The supposed main plots are blurred by paranoid and spiritual structures. So what the series presents is first a cop and gangster movie genre model, but then it goes into underworld networks, which nobody is able to understand how they are connected. And it even has, and we know that from David Lynch's Twin Peaks, extraterrestrial influences. So the Jenna Malone character actually corresponds with extraterrestrial beings. At least we have to believe that to make sense out of one or two of those episodes. And then there is this subtext of vigilantism. Nicholas Winding Refn paints a spiritual landscape of America as he like formulated this. He uses archetypical character design. For example, the Mexican protagonist, Yarisa, gradually turns out to be Santa Muerte. And in the last episode, it's clear she is the holy death of Mexican mythology. And Diana de Young, which is played by Jenna Malone, is actually a high priestess of probably extraterrestrial connections. So the cop and gangster series gradually moves into different territory, which is unforeseeable, absolutely unforeseeable. In the last episode, and I'm spoiling this now, the patriarchy, which is presented before on a failing level, is violently replaced by matriarchy. So that's the whole point of the series, where it leads to. So it's kind of closed in the end. What is very unique with this series, and it probably is Twin Peaks 3 is probably the only series in this direction. It is possible to start this series at any point. So when it was presented at Cannes Film Festival, he started with the third episode and showed the third and the fourth and said it doesn't damage the series. You can start wherever you want and you can rewatch things, and it always brings you new perspectives. And to know who actually dies or not does not damage the viewing experience, as the focus lies always anywhere else. And how this works, I want to show you with one clip, which is here, and I will show it as well, but you can use this clip if you like, and I will share it. Depends on the quality. It's only 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes, and I think it makes sense to see how radical this actually is. So this is the beginning of the final episode of this series, and it's a very slow panning. Very slow panning. You see Jenna Malone dancing to a song by Goldberg. see here that the really radical slow panning kind of loses the actors in the meantime. It comes back and gets lost after. Okay. All right. So I think this is just the first part. So it's 3.5 minutes long, and it has no narrative purpose within the last episode. It's just slowly coming into the final of this series, and I think that's really remarkable. And it's even unspectacular in a way. But it's really typical for this rethinking of how a commercial series in the American context can work. I have to add this series had a lot of negative critics. It had a lot of rejection by the audiences, and it even is, at a certain point, it was hidden in the Amazon Prime context. So as I said, you have to put in the title and then you'll find it, but they don't seem to be proud of this series. But I suppose it's the same problem with the Twin Peaks 3 event series. So it's just going against the rules and at the same time creating something which is highly performative and at the same time absolutely spoiler resistant. Thank you for listening, and I'm curious about your questions.